The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Courtney Kesterson. I'm the CAHF Disaster Preparedness Program Coordinator. We're going to get started here in just a minute. I'm going to give it another minute or two for some more people to join us, and then we'll get started. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, is that Chris Sandoval?
Yeah, this is him.
Hi, Chris. It's Courtney.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I don't think Rich has joined us yet, but we do have about 30 people on the line with us so far. So I think we could probably go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining us. If this is your first time listening in on one of our webinars, this is a joint project between LA County DHS and CAHF's Disaster Preparedness Program. We have a grant through LA County DHS, and so with us today on the line is Chris Sandoval from LA County. And let's see if I can't get the slide going here. And then our SNF consultant, Rich Witerinsky, will be joining us in a minute or so. He is the person that attends all of the Disaster Resource Center meetings for SNFs in LA County, and we'll be hearing from him in a little bit. So again, if you haven't joined us before and this is kind of your first foray into emergency management, maybe your building needs to update their emergency preparedness program to get ready for your next survey. These terms or acronyms here are some very common ones that you'll see used in the CMS EP rule, and also these are terms that you will want to know when you talk to your surveyor about your emergency preparedness plans in your program. And one that we will mention a lot is the statewide medical health exercise. So right now, LA County, they're beginning to plan for, or they're still planning for the statewide medical health exercise. And so we're going to talk a little bit today, and I think on our next webinar, about how to get involved in that as well. So again, we have some maps here that probably look familiar to you, but I think it's always great to remember just how many people we're actually working with in LA County. So there are 364 SNFs, and there are 10 disaster resource centers. These are hospitals that have kind of stepped up to the plate to be these leaders in their region as far as emergency planning goes, and they hold meetings where they get together and discuss their goals and objectives. And then we're going to talk about the particular meeting that we want everybody to get involved with, and that is the hazard vulnerability assessment meetings that have been going on at the DRCs. And that happens once a year. And so Rich will give us an update on how those meetings are going, and then we will hear a little bit about what you can do to turn in your risk assessment or your hazard vulnerability assessment to the county and get kind of like credit or get recognized for participating, especially for when your survey rolls around. So again, this kind of little flow chart just shows how our grant works, how we're bringing this information to you, and then these are the dates that the DRCs are meeting about their hazard vulnerability assessments. So as you can see, it's been going on for about 6 weeks, and we're kind of nearing the end or the home stretch of the HVA meeting process. And so I believe the Whittier DRC is actually meeting today, or they did earlier. So that might be where Rich is right now, actually. I just remembered that. And so then once these meetings wrap up, the hospitals, they'll have a better idea of how all of their healthcare partners in their immediate areas or their regions, what their priorities are for their hazards, and kind of where they need to focus their training efforts for the next year. Chris, did you have anything you wanted to add to that so far?
Regarding the hazard vulnerability assessment, just be prepared if you are attending to share your HVA. They would like to, the DRC would like you to share it electronically. What the DRCs are tasked to do is have an area HVA, so their DRC region, and they would, then you would be tied in, and then you can show your CMS surveyors that you are building or in the community-based coalition building, that you shared your HVA, they know your risk, and also you're working with them to mitigate some of those risks.
Right, exactly. And so what Chris is talking about is using this document here on the lower right. So if you haven't seen this before, this is the hazard vulnerability assessment that we've been referring to. It's a spreadsheet that kind of helps you prioritize the different hazards that you need to prepare for. And then so there's an assessment for your building, and then there's also an assessment for your community. And so the E-tag in the CMS EP rule, it specifically says, you know, there's two parts to this. There's identifying the risks within your own building and what your residents and your staff might face, but you also need to be getting involved with your community. And Chris is right, in LA County, getting involved with your community coalition is getting involved with your disaster resource centers. So if you still have questions about which disaster resource center is closest to you, you can give me an email, or you can go onto our website. We do have a map of the DRCs on the webpage for LA County on CAHFdisasterprep.com, and you can see our address is actually on the screen right now, that URL there. And so with that, you can look at a map of LA County, see which one you're closest to. And if you have any more questions about that, you can email me.
Courtney, this is Rich. May I interject? Hi. Yeah, I was at this meeting at Presbyterian Hospital this morning, as was Chris. And there was four skilled nursing homes that were there. They are slowly trickling in, and it would be worthwhile for any of the skilled nursing facilities to come to these DRC meetings. However, what we've realized as the numbers of skilled nursing facilities begin to appear at the DRC meetings is that there are two crucial meetings that folks should be going to. And the first one in the beginning of the year, as you've indicated, is the HVA, the Hazardous Vulnerability Analysis of their facility, perhaps using CAHF's template that's on their website, perhaps using the Kaiser model, which many people are using. And then toward the end of the year, there's the drill that we're going to be going through. And as you pointed out earlier, it's going to be in terms of radioactivity on 17th of November.
Right, you're talking about the statewide exercise. That's in November.
Statewide exercise.
And then yes, there's also the tabletop in September as well. But you're
absolutely right.
Yes. So the HVA meetings, they do occur once a year in the spring, and we were just saying that the E-tags in the CMS EP rule, there's E-tag 6, which specifically names having that hazard vulnerability assessment with those two components in there, one for your facility and then getting that HVA from your community. That would be E-tag 6. And then there's also E-tag 9, which is the E-tag for collaborating with your local and your community health partners. And so again, attending these two DRC meetings per year, that is how LA County would like to fulfill that requirement with you, with your emergency preparedness program and what CMS is looking for you to do there. So that's a
Correct.
great point. Thank you, Rich.
Let me interject that these are the minimum standards. So having an HVA, having the participating in the exercise and other things. Oh, the desktop, yes, but these are minimum standards, and they should be included in your notebook. So when the life safety people come and want your paperwork, you provide it to them. Also, the issues of if you attend the DRC meeting, pick up an agenda so that you can enclose that in your notebook as well. But these, as I said, minimum standards. So this doesn't preclude you from coming in at 3 in the morning and saying to your staff, okay, we're going to have a drill about where's the shutoffs in the building, so that you are prepared when the bad stuff really happens.
Right. And as we can see on this slide here, the hazard vulnerability assessment, it really is the foundation for everything else that goes into your emergency preparedness program. So like Rich was saying, getting this hazard vulnerability assessment done, this is really the minimum, this is the starting place for having your emergency preparedness program in place and effective for an actual emergency or just for survey. But there is...
And so as has been said, if you've missed the DRC meeting for whatever reason, still put together your HVA, find out where your DRC is, who is running it, and send them your information.
Yes, you can. If you missed your meeting, you can still send your HVA into your DRC coordinator, and they can still help you get credit from the county that way. So
right.
With that, Rich, do you want to say anything more about some of the slides we have here, the information you brought back from the DRC meetings at the beginning of February?
Sure. What meeting? What slide are you on? Or what would you like me to talk about?
This one was for February 5th on the LA USC hospital. So it looks like that they were discussing having their after action drills, and that they also found that they didn't always recognize that flooding was a high risk for them. Is that...
You're absolutely right, and I'm going to kind of interrupt you there from the perspective of us being at LAC USC with Dr. Celentano. What we did was we did a HVA exercise, and then he went around the room, and there was either 7 or 8 nursing homes present at during that day, and they gave some wonderful examples of their HVA. So earthquake continues to be up in the top 3, I would say, if not number 1. But there was, it was curious. People said we're in floodplains, and at the same time, so they included that as an HVA. And today, if the weather continues to rain as badly as they forecast it, I hope we are wrong here, but maybe they're going to be evacuating one of the facilities over there. But they're certainly going to be aware of it because we have so many floodplains in Los Angeles County. And so there was another one that was rather curious. A facility said that the train goes by their facility, and so they put down the HVA that if there were to be an earthquake, the train might jump the tracks and hit the building. And so, it just shows that they were thinking about their individual HVA, their individual building, which is exactly what we want, what the state wants, what is real.
Right. Great. Yeah, no, that's definitely smart of them to take into account train derailment. That's definitely something that I have seen listed on some HVAs. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you identify a unique hazard that you don't see on your HVA, don't be afraid to put that in there yourself. That's perfectly fine. We want you to recognize those unique hazards for your own facilities. So to kind of build on that, if you are part of a multi-chain, make sure that your emergency operations plan actually addresses the unique hazards at your own building. So if you're getting some kind of operations plan from kind of the corporate level, a surveyor can tear you apart just for it not being customized to your own building. That's like the first couple of E-tags right there in the CMS EP rule, is just, is this an emergency preparedness program customized to your residents, to your facilities? And so don't let them catch that. That's kind of an easy one for them to check a box off for you. So, okay. Well, great, Rich. So let's see here. The next one was for...
Well, let me throw something in that emerged at the Pomona Valley Medical Center. And what we did was we talked about the ReadyNet system and the use of it as a communicative tool by the nursing homes and by other healthcare providers, but primarily by nursing homes. And what we learned was that there are approximately 100 buildings out of the 364 that are using ReadyNet at the present time. And in a real life environment, what we want is everybody to use it, everybody to find out firsthand where the disaster is, if there are any beds somewhere else in the event that people need to evacuate, or for that matter, posting that you've got beds available in the event that one of your sister facilities elsewhere need to sequester some residents somewhere. So getting ReadyNet, which is a free program for your building, and using it and cross-training several of your staff. So, ideally there would be at least one person per shift that knew how to use it, because God only knows when the disaster is going to occur. Could happen at 3 in the morning. And at that time, it would be wonderful to be able to have somebody on the staff say, okay, I just checked into ReadyNet and found out that there was this terrible accident somewhere, and they're going to, the hospitals are evacuating part of their patients because of the fact that they will be admitting more from the setting where the disaster occurred.
Right. Well, that's a great point. If you are not already signed up with ReadyNet, you can do that through our grant. That's for free. So LA County has given us funding to help SNFs or ICF IDs, or sorry, just SNFs, to get signed up with ReadyNet, and that is an electronic bed polling system. And we've actually done one webinar on using that before. If you want to go back and look at our webinar, I believe from November, we discussed how to use ReadyNet to participate in the statewide medical health exercise. And then if you haven't signed up, email me and I'll send you that contract, and we'll get that over to them and get your account activated. Okay. Rich, did you want to say anything else about the Pomona Valley meeting before we move on to the Kaiser Sunset one?
No, just that Steve does a magnificent job there in terms of this, in terms of the disaster preparedness that his facility is involved in. And in April, they are going to be doing a active shooter at Pomona Fairgrounds under the auspices of the Pomona facility. And so, I don't know if some people have an interest in that area. If you're in that region, you might want to contact Steve and say, yes, we'd like to become volunteers. We want to observe what's happening, because it might be of benefit eventually to that facility. And by the way, if you do take part in something of this nature, you can take credit that you are involved with the community, the umbrella that you're supposed to be at as far as the DRC.
That's exactly right. Yep, that attending a training that your DRC is putting on, that's a great way to, you'd want to document that and show that to a surveyor when it rolls around about how you've been collaborating with your county. And when you do have that conversation with the surveyor, make sure that you can actually explain it to them, because they're looking for you to be able to articulate your plan in a conversation, like knowing it off the top of your head, because they expect you to be able to drill and exercise on it. If you are not able to kind of describe it, then they will start looking at your plan more closely. We saw in the surveyor procedures, they're instructed to ask you about all of these different elements in your plan. So, and then also ask your staff about the things that they've been trained on as well. So if you have more questions about that, we can talk about that more in a future webinar if you'd like. Okay.
Let me segue here along with what you just said, Courtney, and say that, okay, so you've had a disaster plan or you've participated in a disaster plan. What you need to do at that stage is to do an after-action report and review what's occurred, what was right, what was wrong, and document it, and also keep it in your record because it is something that the life safety people are interested in seeing that you have.
Very good. You're exactly right. Okay. At the Kaiser Sunset Hospital meeting, so it looks like they had a guest speaker from the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles.
Yes,
Rich,
Katie.
go ahead, sorry.
No, that's quite all right. Katie Meyer, she spoke on the topic of children's reaction to disasters. I know that people can just read what we're referencing, but the thing that has to be acknowledged is the vast majority of our staff are female in our nursing homes. And so what are you going to do? How are you going to make it easier for your staff to return to work if by chance they are dealing with some very difficult issues of their own? And the first ones that come to mind is how is my family doing? How are my children doing? What shall I be telling my children? And how should I be interacting with them and reacting to the disaster that's occurred? And she went through a variety of scenarios, and she's talking about, first and foremost, trying to keep the children away from the media, because obviously we're on a 24-hour news cycle, and the people that are reporting frequently, well, they report the worst of the worst.
Right.
And what you want to do is perhaps curtail your children watching as much as you need to know information, but at the same time, maybe you want to limit the amount that they're watching so that they're not upset. Another thing is that perhaps developing some type of an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding with a hotel or a motel near you, so that if you want people to return to work and their house is perhaps damaged, putting them up in a motel is cheaper than not having enough staff to staff your facility. And again, your children as well. And then last but not least, I know it may sound ridiculous, but many of us have pets, and our pets are, for all intents and purposes, our children. So it's a matter of how incorporating into your real plan that you use on a daily basis the issue of where am I going to put Fido?
Right. Yeah, that brings up a great point about the hotels and motels. I know that, when there's a disaster, a lot of times, just because of supply and demand, some of the pricing for alternate housing or places to stay, it skyrockets. So I could see how having an MOU with a hotel or a motel would be really invaluable later on. And then also, I've heard several people, when they're going through a disaster, they try and limit the TVs that are on for their own residents, because just like you were saying with the children, residents might be watching TV and getting more panicked, even though you might be sheltering in place and controlling the situation. So those are some great points. I could see a lot of that translating really easily to, the different demographics that we would find in nursing homes. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so breezing right along, these are some really great reports. On February 28th, there was the West End Cedars-Sinai UCLA meeting. Was there anything that pertained to SNFs from that meeting, Rich?
Well, first of all, as you can see, the third bullet point tells us about the statewide medical and health exercise that will be held on the 15th of November and involving a dirty bomb radiological event. Now, you think to yourself, how is that going to affect me? I'm a nursing home. Well, if a hospital has to evacuate, again, as we've said before, you'll be using your ReadyNet tool to say, well, I've got 3 beds, or for that matter, you have 3 of my residents, I can take them back immediately because I know that you're going to be experiencing a surge of patients coming into your setting. So going to this exercise and participating there'll be more details through the month on this entire process, but nursing homes and dialysis units and clinics and things of this nature have to be included in the entire umbrella. And this is where we should be taking more of an active role.
Right. Well, I think, though, the objectives that nursing homes can still exercise on, despite whatever scenario ends up getting written, is, knowing your policies and procedures for sheltering in place, being able to use ReadyNet to submit, bed polls or status reports. I think the county is really looking for people to know how to use resource requests through ReadyNet as well. So those are all things that we can still exercise on and could definitely use the exercise on, right? So I think there's always going to be people who, the exercise or the scenario has to kind of have something for everyone. So I think that the point at the end of the day is practicing the capabilities of your own staff, and the communication plan using ReadyNet is always a good place to start. So, and again, that'll be on November 15th. It's always on the last Thursday of November. And so we are going to do our next webinar on how to plan for your exercises. So we don't need to dive too much into the statewide medical health exercise right now. Again, we do have a webinar from last November about how to use ReadyNet with the statewide, and we're going to continue to make some more content on that in May and then later on this year as well. So, and it looks like for this meeting that they found that a major earthquake was still the top hazard for this area as well, right, Rich?
It was. There were about 3 or 4 nursing homes that were there, and one that it was significant to hear their story, and it went like this. They were being their nursing home in the line of the burns, the fires that were coming down, and so what they did was they said, we've got to evacuate, and they talked with the fire chief that was there who facilitated that evacuation. And from what they've said to me was that there was a conflict between the Department of Public Health, who suggested strongly that they remain in the building and not evacuate, or that they would be cited as immediate jeopardy, an IJ. Nonetheless, the set of circumstances was so dire that they decided, and we're going to take our residents somewhere else. So they moved. Following day, they returned after OSHA, but everybody came through and deemed that the building was clean and ready to be repopulated. But the thing here is, you as the administrator have to make that call. If you need some assistance, you can call up people like Chris and look at your emergency operations plan, the levels that you should go up, communicate with people, but at the same time, in the end, you're the one who's going to make the call. So it's a very difficult decision, very fraught with stress, but you got to do it.
Right. Yeah, I read an interview with the administrator from the Santa Rosa Kaiser Permanente Medical Center, and he said that when it came time to evacuate, he said, I'm going to get in so much trouble for this, but you had to go. It's at the end of the day, it's the best decision to protect the lives of your residents and your staff. So, and that's another thing that we can really practice in these exercises, is knowing how to activate our plans, what those triggers are, and who we need to be alerting when we are making a change to our operational status. So if you know that you're in an evacuation zone and you should be preparing to evacuate, who are you supposed to be in contact with? Who do you alert when you actually do evacuate? And we are going to go into some of those details on, I believe, April 25th. Or no, sorry. So we're going to have a couple different events in LA this spring. So there's going to be one on April 25th where we're going to recap all of this information from the HVA meetings. And then we're going to have a training on safe evacuation on May 22nd in Long Beach. And that will have a tabletop exercise. And I'll reiterate all of that at the end of the webinar. And we have some links for you to register for those as well.
Yeah, so April 25th, where will that be?
That will be at Mount Ararat in Mission Hills, and so that is a CAHF member event. So if you do want to attend that one, email us or email me and we'll get you that information. I think there's a cost associated with that, and so we'll need to get your information, and there's a form you'll need to fill out. But for that one, we will go over some of the things we discussed here. We'll go over how to complete an HVA if you haven't done that already, and then we'll hear from one of the DRC coordinators as well. And I believe Chris Sandoval will be there too, and so will Rich. So I think that's it for this slide.
Courtney,
go ahead.
Let me interject. So one of the things that we want to do is to obviously give everybody long-term care the tools to pass through their life safety survey. We want to lessen their stress because we know that this, surveys are a stressful event, but we want to lessen this by making them as much of an expert as possible, and then their staff as well. We want to keep the residents and the staff as possible in the event of a disaster. And last but not least, we want to give you the tools so if things go bad, you look good on the evening news.
Very true. And so that'll be at the April 25th meeting. We'll review kind of like how to talk the talk with the surveyor in regards to your hazard vulnerability assessment. And we'll give you some pointers on some of the e-tags that they are kind of trending on, what people are getting marked for, and some ways that you can get extra prepared for those particular areas that surveyors are focusing on. So we already talked about this a little bit, but if you missed your HVA meeting, you can still complete that document and turn it into your DRC. And this is one way for you to kind of get a certificate or recognition from LA County that you are participating with their response plan and their emergency plan and the disaster resource program as well. And again, if you look under handouts, you can find that spreadsheet that I showed you earlier. Alrighty, so now that the hazard vulnerability assessment meetings are pretty much wrapping up, we've got our top hazards identified, and so now as spring, summer rolls on, we're going to be making those updates to our program based on those new hazards that we found. We're going to be talking about what you actually want to train your staff on, and then how you can find partners to exercise with leading up to the full-scale exercise where you'd be exercising with the county level.
But you can also partner up with your fire department or police department in the area to do an active shooter drill, to do a, I don't know, with fire people, they'd love to come out and have you practice with fire extinguishers. That is one area that our staff, I know this from firsthand, was every year we would have to have our fire extinguishers, I think it was every year, checked out and make sure that they're pressure tested, that they've got enough stuff in them, that they're going to work when they work. And so we would take the fire extinguishers out. There's a cost incurred with this, but we would let the staff use them. It was amazing how many people thought that these things have a kick like a gun and all kinds of other stuff, and they were frightened to try the fire extinguisher. But everything turned out fine. There's just a lot of dust in the parking lot. But it provided with a level of confidence. And so if you have that date coming up that you're going to be replenishing your fire extinguishers, take them outside and let your staff play with them. And then mark that off as a drill.
Hey, that's a great idea. So Rich brought up a good point about finding partners for you to do your full-scale exercises with. And so if you haven't already learned about the requirements for your exercises, you can look back at some of our past webinars and you can find more information on that. But if you're looking for partners to do a full-scale exercise and your survey is going to happen before that statewide medical health exercise, you can still accomplish this by partnering up with other facilities as well. If you have sister facilities or maybe there's a neighboring facility, we talk to people a lot about creating these memorandums of understanding. So we already talked a little bit about this when Rich was talking about finding places for your staff to stay at that motel or hotel. That's one type of MOU, but MOUs are actually a huge part of your emergency preparedness program. There's an actual e-tag for it, and it's because CMS wants SNFs to be able to have these pre-identified locations or alternate care sites in case you need to evacuate in short notice and you don't have time to find some sort of like facility for your residents to go to. They're looking for you to have these agreements already in place. And having these agreements in place, it's not just good for the regulatory requirement, but it's also important for reimbursement as well. Because in an emergency, if you don't have these agreements in place, you can find yourself on the hook for transportation costs, for any time or equipment lost. And if you don't have the proper agreements in place, you can even lose your residents if they get discharged or readmitted to another building. Using an MOU that spells out these kind of like 30-day patient transfers, that's really what CMS is looking for and what they prefer you to do. So again, if you're evacuating, don't discharge your patients. CMS is looking for you to do just a 30-day transfer, and you can use our MOU template to accomplish this. We have it on our website under MOUs. I failed to make it a handout today, but I will go ahead and email it to anyone that is interested, or you can go to our website and look under MOUs. So here we have the actual text from the e-tag. So facilities, or this is from the interpretive guidance. So this is like the most comprehensive, like kind of plain language explanation that CMS has given us for what they want us to do about E25, which is having these pre-arranged transfer agreements. So some of the elements that they want you to consider are transportation resources. So if you know the capacities or how many vans you have, include that in the agreement. And then also any staff that you might be sending with your residents, all of that needs to be included in here. And if you look at our template, those sections are already in there, and we have a copy of that here as well. So and then these are the survey procedures. So this is what the surveyor will actually do when they come to your building, and you can show them these agreements that you have used, and then you can use these to exercise as well. So you already have your partners ready to go when it's time to do your annual exercises.
Courtney, let me interject that, you mentioned we talked about hotels for staff in the event that they were not able to get home or they something happened with their home. So that's an MOU. And again, it doesn't have to be the Ritz. It can be a clean hotel, motel that you are negotiating a rate for in the event that something happens. Another MOU is one for gas stations. And this may sound ridiculous, but the fact is that I remember I had a diesel generator in my facility, and the MOU that I had was with a diesel company that was in San Bernardino. And I thought to myself, yeah, this makes sense. Whoever arranged for them to come out in the event of an earthquake or something, half the roads between San Bernardino and Paramount at that time would be closed. So I'm doing an MOU with a gas station for gas and diesel for your generator. Doing an MOU for a market. So, for instance, a Rouse. There was a was a nursing home administrator, came to one of the DRC meetings, and I believe it was at Kaiser. And she said that she had gone through several disasters in the Houston area when she was an administrator in Texas. She said she went to the supermarket because they were running short on food at that facility because the disaster was going, it was a hurricane for days and days. She says that she was going down the aisle putting bread into her shopping cart. People were actually coming behind her and taking the bread out of the shopping cart.
Oh,
so
wow.
she located the manager of the facility, and she told that person that she ran a nursing home. Could she have preferential treatment? And so he took her out the back where the loading dock was. She was able to get the product that she needed for her facility directly from the loading dock where the people weren't going to be taking it out of her shopping cart. So anyway, having an MOU with or a relationship with a Ralph's, with a whatever whatever supermarket you have in your area is not a bad idea. Additionally, we've talked about this sad subject, but an MOU with a mortuary, because if somebody passes away, you're supposed to have a plan for the body within so many hours for Title 22. And so having an MOU with a mortuary, not a bad idea. And then obviously other facilities, your nursing homes, and then transportation.
Right. And it's important to note this e-tag, it just is addressing finding alternate care sites for residents. So this isn't taking into account like MOUs with grocery stores or something like that. All of those other types of MOUs, those are kind of like best practices.
Right.
But they are really great ideas for sure. It just depends on kind of how ambitious you're feeling, or how integrated in your community you are or want to be, but definitely start with reaching out to any sister facilities you have, any neighboring facilities you may have. You could even, I guess if you want to make MOUs for resources, you could do MOUs with dialysis or with clinics, but just make sure that you are reviewing that text for E25 and make sure that you're addressing the things that CMS spells out in there, like transportation and staffing hours, and any supplies you would need to send with your residents as well. And then lastly, for MOUs, if you do use our template, a lot of people ask us if there should be an expiration date on it. We've found that when people set expiration dates in their MOUs, a lot of times by the time it expires, it's a different administrator, and then you kind of have to start from square one. So just if you have any questions about adding anything to our MOU template, you can go ahead and give me an email, and we can figure out what would be best for your particular situation there. Chris or Rich, did you have any more comments on MOUs?
Yeah, if you want, all of what we're describing, especially the things that I just thrown at folks, it sounds like it's overwhelming. I would recommend that every facility could use more residents, right? And so it's a matter of marketing. So what I would suggest is that you develop a kind of an open house for your facility from places like the gas station, the market, the hotels, the mortuary, other facilities, transportation, veterinary services, and legislators. Have them come to your building and then show them around, make sure that they know that what type of a facility you are, and give them your brochures. And every year you do that to reestablish these types of relationships. And then if you need some MOUs, have them signed on the spot, and you can kill a lot of birds with one stone. And, again, there's a possibility that somebody there might have a mother that needs to be in a nursing home or somebody was broken. So, again, you can do this easier than tracking down and going to your local Ralph's or something of this nature and saying, I want to speak with the manager. Attract them to your building.
Right. I've heard several people say that on days like September 11th, they have sort of like an open dinner for first responders as well. So that's a great way to get the fire department in your door and familiarizing them with your campus so that if there is an emergency, they don't pull up in the back parking lot when they need to be in the front, and they know their way around. and they know your staff as well. So that's a really great way to kind of incorporate your emergency preparedness plans into, maybe your overall safety culture at your facility.
And if you have this type of an event, what you do is you have them sign in, show them, clip it to your disaster thing, and take credit for it.
There you go. That's another way to do it, Rich. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so lastly, what else can MOUs help with? So I kind of started off with this, but MOUs are a great way to test your emergency operations plan. Again, you got a list of partners right there with your MOUs that will probably need to do their full-scale exercises as well. And then if you do your full-scale exercise, just know that you're not actually expected to move your residents. You can use like a CPR dummy, like we have pictures there, or you could use staff members and use them as fake victims. You can get creative with that there, but you do need to be simulating like actual emergency operations and actual like resident movement. And then again, the statewide mental health exercise, that's November 15th, the last Thursday of that month. And that is when LA County will issue an alert and people can respond using ReadyNet or CAHF. And we will go more into depth on how to plan and get involved with that as the year goes on. And let's see.
Let me throw something in as well.
Go ahead.
This morning, when Chris and I were at Presbyterian Hospital, the lady there, Isabel, who is the disaster coordinator, she talked about a low notice, no notice drill that will be occurring within the context of acute care hospitals. The feds, if I'm not mistaken, have imposed these types of, let's say, plans that the hospitals have to incorporate and do. Chris, could you give us a little bit more information about how that's going to work in pertaining to nursing homes?
So initially it's going to be acute hospitals. We're looking at, the way the budget process is in the grant process, we are in a 5-year grant period, and this is year 1. We're looking at maybe year 4 incorporating long-term care. We're going to work with the acute facilities first. They would like us to actually move 20%, I believe it was 20% of our population, which is a huge amount. Excuse me, it was less than that, I'm sorry. The percentages leaves me right now, but it's a large amount of patient movement. I think it was going to, the percentage was based off, it was about 1,200 patients.
Yeah.
To move that many patients. We're going to move from 3 acute facilities in April. It's only a select people know. I don't even know the date of the actual exercise, and so they're going to give them a 2-week notice starting April. They're going to give them, you have in this 2-week period, we're going to possibly show up, and then once when that 2-week period comes in to play, they're going to give them a 60-minute window. They're going to call them up or email them and say, we're on our way, we'll be there in 60 minutes, and we're going to have you evacuate your whole entire facility. Not actual movement of patients, but more of a tabletop paper type patients. They're going to be able to do a HABBED report, which is a hospital availability poll. And hospitals are currently doing that now. They do an availability poll. How many open beds are in the county system twice a day at 9 in the morning and 9 at night. So they'll be able to move patients on paper to certain facilities. It will eventually move to another region, another 3 facilities, and we're going to progress to now maybe our acute facility, maybe sending some of our med-surg, some of our chronic condition patients to a long-term care and helping with evacuation of those patients. That is our plan, maybe year 4, maybe, or 3 or 4, so possibly 3 to 4 years from now. That is our plan with the surge strategy as well, is if there was an event and we needed to discharge patients or move patients out of the hospital setting so that they can continue to receive acute patients, we can use some of those long-term care beds and move some of our patients out of the hospitals to your facilities.
Very interesting. So it's definitely important to get plugged into your DRC because a lot of these hospitals' surge plans involve kind of decompressing some of their patients to long-term care facilities. So that's definitely, if you are plugged in on ReadyNet, you might see some activity on that in April. And if you do see alerts on that, go ahead and submit a operational status on ReadyNet if you are able to get involved in that drill just by updating your operational status. Chris, do you
Correct.
think that is a good way for people to kind of be aware of this no notice or low notice drill with the hospitals?
Yes, it's a great way to be involved in it and actually update the system, because then we can start seeing that yes, the long-term care facilities are looking into participating in this activity. Currently, we don't test the long-term care facilities in that manner. Once we get more people involved and we see that there is a participation from this sector, that we could possibly go toward maybe having a habit report and updating their status on a regular basis.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. Thank you. Thank you for letting us know about that. And if I hear anything more about that, then I will try and send out information to anyone that is interested or is tuned in today. We'll definitely keep our eye on that for that April drill.
Well, to kind of piggyback a little bit on what you're saying and also what Chris said, this is just another way of practicing. And so, and in the future, you know, it's a matter of developing relationships, participating, documenting. And pretty soon, you know, within the next few years, we are kind of like going to be totally immersed in this entire process. It's already beginning, and you know, the EOPs, the HVAs, things of this nature, the drills, but it's going to get even more intense in the not too distant future.
Right. Thank you. All right. So that is the end of my MOUs section. And so if anybody has any questions about anything we spoke about today, you can go ahead and submit that into our question box now. I'll take a quick look right now. Let's see. Can we also get a copy of the slides today? Yes, I can go ahead and send that out. What is my email? It's ckesterson@cahf.org, or you can go ahead and email the account for this GoToWebinar. That goes to my email as well. If you want to email me, I'll spell it out really quick. It's ckesterson@cahf.org. And let's see. Simca Stern says, our local police and fire departments do not have any interest in participating in any exercises with us. Chris, do you have any advice for any long-term care providers that might have trouble getting the attention of their local response authorities?
That's something that we have a tough time with as well. I think even with our statewide exercise, we only had we had one department represented, and we battle with it because they're short-staffed as well. So, and near the volume of all the hospitals and long-term cares and even all the sectors themselves, if we look at long-term care, we mentioned 364 dialysis, there's about 190 in the county, and hospitals are about 100. And surgical centers, just the clinics alone, there's about 200. So we have about over 1,000 healthcare facilities in this. So that's really tough. I don't have any great idea. It depends on just reaching out to the smaller ones. Keep reaching out and finding, because what happens is people move in positions, and maybe you'll eventually find the right one. There isn't I wish there was an easy answer for that.
There is. It's called donuts, and pizza, and you know, sending stuff over to the firehouse or to the police station. Make friends with these people. Talk with their chief. Remind them that we're all in it together. And so you have to be somewhat of a pest.
All right, that's pretty funny. You could also try working with sister facilities if you're not having too much luck getting the local authorities involved. Maybe asking if you have a contract with an ambulance provider, if they would be willing to assist you in simulating that kind of physical movement of patients, or kind of putting your staff through the motions of loading people and loading supplies up to an ambulance. That, like Chris said, that's kind of a difficult one because in LA County they are kind of overwhelmed. Let's see, we got another question. Is there a sample MOU for transportation services? Yes, so if you get our MOU template, it should have a section in there that talks about transportation. And Grace, I will follow up with you and make sure that we get a policy to you that kind of answers your question there for transportation. Let's see, Michelle asked about 1135 waivers. How does that come into play, and do you have any sample policies available? Yes, so we actually have a couple different policies available. An 1135 waiver, that is something that you would submit to licensing and CDPH when you are experiencing a disaster where you're not able to comply with the rights of participation. So that means, like, if you can't keep your staffing ratio, if you have to evacuate to a location that doesn't offer the kind of services that you're looking for. 1135 waivers are usually used in states where it's the threats or the hazards are more like hurricanes, or they have like a couple of days to kind of prepare and do evacuations a little bit slower. Usually with 1135 waivers in California, we don't see those too often, just because a lot of times the events are so, how do you say, they happen so quickly, like with the wildfires and earthquakes. We don't get those kind of like pre-warning events. But the CMS EP rules does still ask you to have a policy for that. So if you go to our website, go under emergency operations plans, we do have a couple of policies there.
By the way, that was a great question. We talked about the waiver issue this morning at Presbyterian, and Presbyterian itself had some problems with the life safety with the CMS people about that issue. So it's important to have knowledge about it and have it available in the event that you're going to use it, or even not use it.
That is a good question. I've seen it across the board, not on just long-term care hospitals, but surgical centers, and even cross-county lines in Orange County and LA County. They're asking for that 1135 waiver. And apparently, Isabel was mentioning that she's a DRC coordinator. She was saying that they wanted it filled out already have it filled out, and she had an issue with it because of the fact that she doesn't fill it out until the need is, and that waiver really, depending on the event, will determine what is completed on that form. So it's obvious some of the surveyors aren't aware of what they're looking for or understand what they're evaluating.
Right, and we usually don't see people need to submit 1135 waivers until there's, it's like those events where you get those federal presidential declarations and like FEMA comes in. CMS is really looking for you to rely on transferring and using MOUs to avoid having to submit an 1135 waiver. Let's see. Somebody said, Gabriella asked, is there any other way to communicate in a disaster other than with ReadyNet? We are a long-term care facility that highly depends on another sister facility, but in a huge disaster, we would like to have other forms of communication. So Gabriella, you can use ReadyNet, but you can also email the LA EMS duty officer, I believe, and that information, it's all in their response plan. I don't think we have it posted on our website, but I can make sure that I get that done. It'll have an email, a phone number you can reach, radio frequencies in case you decide to get like a satellite phone or some kind of ham radio.
Let me just say this. At the DRC meeting for St. Mary's a week or so ago, they talked about several different free apps. So, for instance, Nixel is a free app if you're in Long Beach and you want to know anything about the Long Beach police department or fire department. There's another one called Pulse Point, and this is mass notifications. That's through Dignity Healthcare. And there's a bunch of free apps because one of the people that was at that meeting said that he's recently started as their disaster coordinator, and he says he's got about 8 different phones that he has to streamline, and so they use one because it's just not very it's very unwieldy. And so people started whipping apps at him. And so there are free apps that you can use. And while we were there, this one fellow, he was connected with this type of an app with one of the participants there. And so he just called a number or hit a button on his phone, and he was able to talk with that person in the room. It was free. So there are a lot of different apps that are available nowadays. And so you don't have to spend any money. You just have to get the app and hook it up to your phone. The problem with that is that if the towers go down, if the earthquake is, let's say, really bad, and we don't have phone coverage, then we got a big problem here, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
But again, ReadyNet is free. You just need to sign the contract. So if that's something that you want to use. If you also have Everbridge, the county does not provide it for long-term care because of the mere cost of it, and we're putting a lot of our funding towards ReadyNet. So if you wanted to get Everbridge, and that's a mass communication system, you can get it at the county rate, which is it's inexpensive in comparison if you just try to sign up on your own without the county rate. If you just let them know that you are in LA County and you like to receive that type of rate, then you can do that as well. But that is a cost that your facility will incur.
How about ham radio?
What type of communication she wants to do with her other facility? What besides phone and email? The ReadyNet does have that satellite base, and you would, even if the lines go down, you will be able to have that satellite function.
That's good to hear. How about Zello? That's the one that radio.
Unfortunately, we could probably talk about apps for communication all day, but that is all the time we have for now. I have a couple people to follow up with, so I'm going to email the slides out to everyone, and we're going to put this recording on our YouTube channel. And please make sure that you're registered for our next webinar. We're going to discuss planning your annual exercises, and we're going to talk about how to run a tabletop with your own staff. We're going to talk about what to train your staff on. We're working on some in-services for CNAs and some different people at your building. And then we're going to talk more about the statewide medical health exercise. So again, if you haven't submitted your HBA to your Disaster Resource Center coordinator, please do so. And then we will see you next time. All right. Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Rich, for joining us today. And
thank you, Courtney.
All right. Everyone have a good evening. Thank you.